You're the first astrologer ever. I actually have an astrologer who's also coming on. So it's so fun that I can like invite different people on. And sometimes there's a collective of sameness because you're an astrologer. I have an astrologer coming on. You also are going through a rebrand that's launching soon. And I just talked to a brand designer. So I just love all of the connection. As an astrologer and integration coach, what does your day-to-day look like?
Yeah, yeah, that's so fun. When multiple kind of like themes and layers come towards you at the same time, I always take notice of that. Just in my own human experience, it lets me know, okay, I'm meant to be looking at and paying attention to this thing. And I think that it also translates quite well to just you kind of naturally take that big picture lens when you're an astrologer. And then also as like an integration coach, what I help people do is take all of the different layers and thoughts that are bubbling up in our brilliant minds that can just stay like concept and help us find our own kind of like voice and truth and like a sense of wholeness within all of the layers that we're always kind of like looking at and thinking about. So I love like parsing into the details, but then also having one foot in the big picture. And what does my day to day look like? My days, I really just feel very present in the part of whatever like process I'm in. You mentioned that I do have a rebrand coming out on Monday. We're recording this
Mm.
on Friday. So you're catching me at maybe from the outside, which could look like a little harder of a pivot than like you would normally speak about, right? But it actually
Yeah.
feels to me like a very soft pivot. And like to me, that word means just like the organic next step. Like I
Hmm.
arrive to my day, I arrive to the big projects and the little projects that I'm at. Like if like this is just the natural next thing I'm supposed to be doing. And wherever I'm at in the process, I want to enjoy being there in the process. And I think sometimes it's easier said than done to like value where you're at in the moment because sometimes where you're at in the process and in the day and like in that larger cycle is like maybe a crunchier part of the process where you're realizing that you don't have like the tools or the skills or the support you need to get where you want to go. Or maybe you're in a season of shedding and it feels just like hard and heavy and you're having to let go of things. Right now, I feel like I'm kind of on like more of like the upswing kind of like cycle, part of the
Hmm.
cycle. So it's a little bit easier for me to say, like, I just get to show up to my days and really enjoy them, whether I'm running my business on the back end or meeting with clients in the context of an astrology reading or coaching sessions, or just getting to be really creative. But there's a little bit of like the energy and a little bit of what I'm doing in my days. I'm curious what kind of like stood out to you.
Hmm. No, yeah, I love how just, you kind of just normalize the fact that going through different journeys or places that you are experiencing in your business or your life, there are like projects, there's tasks, but then there's also like, there might be some uncomfortable feelings, or maybe like for you, like you feel like you're finally like, there, you're not you're not saying that you're in like a messy middle right now, but you're like you're coming out of this integration or this big project essentially.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been really interesting to reflect on that because that like literally is happening in real time where at least with this project of within the project I've branded my business. I did a new website, I have copy, and I'm 3+ years into business and that was all something that was kind of just like homegrown
Hmm.
and I learned over time. So have I didn't even really know like what a brand was. Like I knew I needed help with the website and I knew I had a business. And then in working with my brand designer, Natasha at Moons and Things Co., I realized like, okay, I really do need this kind of like container to hold me. But
Hmm.
we started the project in March and that did kind of kick off. I mean, again, I kind of think about it in the context of like, yes, like the bounds of this project, I'm like exiting the middle part of it, but it's
Hmm.
also like the greater context of my life. Like even before March, I was in a much more internal season. Like when you and I met over
Mhm.
the winter time and we're voice noting a lot, I was moving through grief. I was moving through a lot of things in
Mhm.
my personal life. I was in a more reflective season, that very more like winter internal energy. So as a whole, this year I knew was going to be a lot more about from that place. I really came to understand what I value and where I really love meeting people, which is one-on-one, as we've also talked about. So
Mhm.
making more space for that. And this project kind of like lives within that larger arc. So I'm still in like the middle of my, I feel like I'm never not in the middle because there's always these other processes running in tandem, right?
Mhm.
So it's like always a yes and for me, I guess. But within to like zoom it back in on the brand work, it does feel really exciting, like, and still like to have these milestones within the process that we can like be really present with and celebrate and like recognize is like, okay, this part of like the becoming and this part of the middle and this part of like the trusting of the process and the being in the process is having a significant milestone right now. And I'm
Mhm.
kind of getting to stand in that place, which is something that as a Virgo rising who's always kind of looking at the next thing, I'm like, I have to
Mhm.
remind I feel like that presence is like really a muscle to be like,
Mhm.
okay, let's just like stop with that constant forward motion and like really like soak this in. So I
Yeah.
kind of meandered about there, but what stood out to you?
No, yeah, yeah. I think well, first of all, like when we first met, I was also going through grief. So I almost think that when you meet people for the first time or you start to connect with somebody, you really do connect to the people who you almost need. Or
Mm,
can relate, or you can talk about those things because I think grief specifically is really difficult in business or just in general, I mean, life, but
mhm.
it's not talked about a lot when it comes to running a business, marketing yourself, creating content, all of those things. You still have to show up for your business and all of those things. But something that really stood out, second point, is the fact that you said that it's like you're never not in the middle of like the messy middle or just like we're constantly evolving. And that's something that I had to come to terms with too, because there was a day where I was like, am I just like always in the messy middle? Like, can I ever like get out of here? But I think there are just so many layers to life, to business with all of these projects that it is kind of like a perpetual cycle. I don't think it
Mhm.
has to last forever, but you find yourself in and out of it constantly, or there are just seasons in life where you are like stuck in that middle feeling of just trying to figure things out.
Yeah, I think that sometimes, yeah, sometimes like you can see the end and or the milestones like within the process that create some like comfort and grounding within the middle. And other times you're just in the middle and you're like maybe at like this the start of it or you've been in the thick of it for a while and you're not really quite sure yet still like where it's heading or what you want and you have to and I that's kind of like the quality of like a grief middle on like the personal lens or just like starting to want to change something in business but not really being sure what that thing is and just having to show up that day for what you know in the moment and stay open to like the micro version of the change and trust that it's leading to the that it's leading you to more clarity down the line. But that's what was coming up for me when you were speaking. I think it's a lot, and we can almost like grasp and try to force and try to create these like milestones and these endings of like, oh, I'll be done with this. Like my grief's gonna end in three when it's at the 3 month mark from the thing that I'm longing the loss of or like suffering the loss of. And then like that arrives and you realize, oh, I just made that up to like create some comfort in the moment. But we
Mhm.
can really like grasp to those things and try to control the process. And I think that life as of late has really invited me or made me realize that there's so much trust that is required to really be able to like show up for the messy middle that you're in. Because sometimes you
Mhm.
have like a line of sight and like a clear idea of the milestones that kind of create that safety and grounding in your growth process, if you will. And other times, like we really just like also never fully do.
Mhm.
But trust, yeah, having like building a strong sense of trust in myself and finding other ways to ground down and resource myself through those middle points is what helps me. I'm curious how you resource yourself and how you see your clients resourcing themselves in those middle moments too.
I think a big part, at least for me, is celebrating the small wins. Like that's huge. And I think we could always do more of that. Sometimes we put it off like, oh, like it's not that big of a deal. But when you really do celebrate yourself and like give yourself a moment to be proud of yourself or to really just like feel that accomplishment, it can really help build the momentum. And I think it does like play into the clarity part as well because you start to see things moving forward and like just slowly going, and I think that is a sustainable way to keep moving instead of like staying stuck. And like if people do feel stuck, that's okay too. Like it's a time to reflect. It's a time to ground yourself, be with yourself, try to understand why. And not enough of us do that because we're always constantly moving, 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 going, going, going. And like that is what entrepreneurship really forces us to do sometimes. But every every entrepreneur I listen to's on their podcast or their YouTube video or whatever, any advice that I see, a lot of people express so much how important it is to give yourself a day or a few hours or at least 20 minutes to just be with yourself and like ask yourself questions about where you're at and where you want to be.
Yeah, 1000%. I love the celebration energy around it too. And like that taking a pause to look back and recognize yourself. This is actually one of like I love to offer this to people through the lens of astrology because full moons in particular like really invite us to recognize the growth that has already happened. And even just like working with a new moon and a full moon every 2 weeks, we have these reminders from the cosmos, like check in with ourselves and check in with a certain like domain of life too and reflect on that. I kind of chuckle because it's like I agree with you. It's an everyday sort of thing that we need, and also a practical way to kind of like get curious about astrology and use astrology to support you is in noticing on a full moon what you've already grown into and celebrating
Mhm.
that growth and taking a pause to kind of like look back. I also help my clients do this a lot in some of my containers of like, we do a lot of like practical intention setting, I guess you could say, within the context of my coaching. And the same
Mhm.
thing that of what you were saying of it, people really don't recognize how far they've already come in creating a thing that they say that they want because
Mhm.
the ultimate goal is so far ahead. But when you stop and recognize at the end of every single day, I almost recommend it in terms of like, say you already do a gratitude list at the end of your day of the things you're grateful for, just tacking it onto that process of, okay, if I know as a whole, my intention is to be more unapologetically like authentic in my self-expression and not try to be anyone but myself. You would also like have a thing where it's like today I was unapologetic and totally myself in my expression, and then you list it out and it's just gives you the evidence of like, oh, I did do that like with my friend at coffee, and I did
Mhm.
that in my journal practice, and then that threads I posted like really felt like a little edgy in the moment, but it was me. But it's like celebrating ourselves and recognizing that in little moments just builds that momentum so much more.
Yeah, for sure. I was wondering if you were planning on celebrating or doing anything like that for your rebrand or if you've already done that.
I love that question. One thing I think I might do is repaint my entire office color green. I want to drench
No.
this room.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes, I think
just
so.
like all the same color. All this like I love green, and there's this really just rich green color that I wiggled into my brand colors because I love
Hmm.
it. And I asked Natasha to squeeze her in there, and I think I'm just going to drench this room and kind of like do a remake of it. I think part of this process, I'm getting married this summer as well, and I've
Oh,
been
fun.
reflecting on, yeah, thank you. It's been interesting having both of these projects run in parallel because there's like they're both almost like very Venusian in that like there's this like sensual embrace of like things that are beautiful, and like I realized through the rebrand when I did my photo shoot that like, oh, I really like wearing nail polish on my nails. Like that is not a frivolous thing. Like I like that form of self-expression. I realized when kind of like doing all my stuff for my wedding that like, oh, getting my eyebrows tinted is not a frivolous activity. Like that is something I enjoy doing, and like this process of like beautification and like letting things feel really good from the inside out, right? Like those were
Mhm.
obviously like external examples, but just even in how I show up to my day, I don't have to show up to that day of like, oh, I better like hustle and like do all this shit and work, which is really the energy that the old corporate salesperson who started building her own business like built it from. And I think that I spent a lot of time trying to extrapolate that impulse out of me. And now
Mhm.
I really think that part that it just feels a lot more embodied, I guess you could say, or like easy to and natural to be in that. No, I'm actually going to wake up every day and like genuinely just like do what feels good on the inside and trust that like the output's going to be the same,
Mhm.
and it's going to feel way better in the process. So you asked me how I'm going to celebrate, but those are kind of like the big perspectives that have come to me through all of this. And I think one of the
Mhm.
ways I want to like express and lean into that perspective that like this moment gets to feel really good is continuing to like do that and honor that in my day-to-day life. And I think I really do just want to like do a little makeover for my office over 4th of July weekend.
Yay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I love all of that. When you were talking about how like, just waking up and trusting that whatever you do is going to move you forward or just like be part of the entire process of what you're building or what you want to accomplish, it makes me think about how some days where I don't wake up and I'm just like straight to the hustle. Like those are actually my most productive days. There are some days where I'll wake up and I'm like, oh, I have so much to do. Like I have little time and I'm like hustling, like stressing out about everything. And that's when I'm like actually the least productive or I get less done or I just feel like the day went by so fast where Fridays are like my favorite days because I get to do these podcast episodes. I do some content writing or creation. Like I pack my days on Fridays, but I do have like buffer times. But I'm also the most relaxed. I almost feel like maybe there's less pressure to quote show up because a lot of people take off on Fridays or a lot of people are kind of off social media on Fridays and things like that. So I don't know. I just really could relate to the whole like just trusting the fact that like whatever you do is going to support you at wherever you are in the journey.
Yeah. Yeah. When you were speaking, it makes me think about just the elements of like earth energy and water energy and fire energy and air energy. Those are the four elements present in the astrological world. And when we're talking about like work and productivity, it's earth energy. And all in my readings and just in how I relate to astrology and explain it to people too to make it relatable is there's two ends of the spectrum. So some days when we're showing up and doing our earth energy things, like the crunchy version of earth energy and work is like we feel so much responsibility, we feel so much pressure, we're like living for the future, we're just grinding, and it feels really heavy and we can feel really stuck in that cycle too. The other side of earth energy, where we want to be, is feeling really grounded, feeling in trust, feeling really present, feeling really fulfilled, feeling like we're building a legacy that's worth something, being in service, and recognizing. So, like, all of these spectrums are present in the seasons we move through, but then also present in like your chart. And I've totally like I have a lot of earth energy in my energetics in my birth chart,
Hmm.
and I spent a lot of my life on and a lot of just my time in entrepreneurship too, like in that crunchier, like if I could just build that skill, learn that thing, get to that place, then I can show up to my day and not feel like I have to jump right on my computer and force a post out and all of this. And
Hmm.
bringing it back to what you were saying, it's like really what we want is each one of those elements and each one of those parts of life to be in the mix a little bit. If all of our days just in earth energy, we're going to be on that crunchy, constricted side of it. We want the other pieces of the puzzle in there because then we feel equilibrium, we feel contentment. So it is starting your day with maybe something that feels restful and nourishing and rejuvenating to you, a little bit of water energy. Maybe it's going straight towards the thing that makes you feel really creative and makes you feel excited and whatever it is that you're genuinely inspired by. Maybe you feel like writing in the morning and that was something that you had written on your schedule for tomorrow afternoon. Like do it when you have the spark, and then
Mhm.
that sparks everything else, even the tasks that might feel a little bit more like admin or just like boring. Like all of a sudden, everything is infused with that reminder of like, oh yeah, I have a passion for this business. I'm doing this for a reason, and it gets to feel good. And then suddenly we've shifted onto that easier expression of earth energy, which is, oh, I can trust that I can trust that it's all going to get done. And I can feel really grounded and like present and enjoy this experience too.
Ooh, I love how you like shared the elements and how maybe like how you look at your day. There are different things that you do that is more earthy, more watery, more airy, more fiery. And I'm a Capricorn, Sun, Moon, Cancer, rising Sagittarius. So like I have a good mix, I feel like, but
Mhm.
the Sun of Capricorn, I don't know if I'm like what's your like take as an astrologer? Like, are people more like their sun, their moon, their rising? Does it depend on the person? I think people would want to know.
Yeah, no, I think it does. I think it does depend. Were you about to say that your Capricorn kind of takes over?
I feel like that's kind of how this whole conversation has been going in the last bit. Like, I'm just like very Capricorn. I do feel like I have like that crunchy and that like maybe more like grounded side
Like
to,
what I call the other one.
yeah.
It's like the easeful or the challenging. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so it's naming the spectrum is like what normalizes it too, that it's like normal to like show up with that, oh, I better keep building. Like that is like the natural impulse and motivation of your Capricorn energy. And also like you have agency to choose like, okay, and what does that really want? And wants to like build something that lasts and like be sustainable and take one step after another. So it's like, what is the step I'm taking now? But all of your other energetics actually like are there to support it. So it's really nice that you have like the Cancer moon that reminds you that actually I really need this like internal nourishment as well. And to have private time and to have time in your own personal life that's outside of this public world and business that you're building. And I imagine you feel like tension between that quite often because they're opposite signs. You're sort of a full moon baby too, which gives you actually like a little pep in your step too, even though they're like earth and water signs. And then obviously
Hmm.
your Sag rising also gives you a little bit of that fire, a little bit of that doing, a little bit of that action, a little bit of that, hold on, it's time to break out of this, go nourish myself and rest versus go build something and work. Like thing you're always doing and like have
Hmm.
days like this in your week where you're like, I just get to like speak truth and explore conversations with people. This experience right now feels very Sagittarius to me because it's very like truth oriented
It's
and work.
raw.
Yeah. Yeah. So how did that land for you? I'm curious.
No, yeah, I feel like it's always a constant push and pull for me, but I
Yeah.
think the more I've learned about my astrology and my human design and things like that, I feel like it's been really validating on how I'm just built. I'm built this
Yeah.
way, and it's just, it helps you learn more about yourself and normalize the different ways you navigate life or business or whatever you're out here to do and stuff like that. I I'm curious what your signs are.
Yeah. Yeah. My signs are I'm a Libra sun, I'm a Capricorn moon, and I'm a Virgo rising. So I'm all earth and air energy. And I have a little bit of like fire like behind the surface when you look at the rest of my chart, but I'm mostly like all my planets are in earth and air for the most part. So air energy, cerebral energy. And I think you're right that it's like it is just very validating and affirming, even when like within the birth chart and like about my sense of self, but then also in like the what I'm feeling on a week to week or seasonal kind of basis. Like for example, last week I was feeling pretty like heady, and it was a lot harder for me to be in that place of presence and
Mm.
not like future tensing and having some anxiety around all the stuff I have to do before the rebrand launches. Like last week, I was just, it was a little less grounded for me. And I was like, oh, yeah, well, we're heading towards a Gemini new moon, and Gemini is bringing more air energy into the mix right now. It's building up as it's approaching. And I just had this cosmic context, is what I call it, whether it's about the season or about yourself, where I'm like,
Mhm.
oh, okay, it just makes sense, is almost like that inner feeling. And then it's that validation that you said comes after that of, and thus I don't have to, and thus it's not wrong. Like
Mm.
it's okay. Like it is normal that I just let my Capricorn part of me like run wild with my day. And I'm a little burnt out now because I went too hard in the paint with all that productivity and just stayed on that train and didn't listen to my intuition. It was like, go take a walk. Like it's
Mhm.
normal. Like it is okay. And once that validation hits, like, to me and what I witness in my work too is like once you have the validation, it actually opens up a lot of it opens up a lot. Like it
Mhm.
opens up a lot more choice, a lot more like freedom to like take an exhale and be like, okay, cool. Now what do I want to do? And now how do I want to relate to myself in this moment? And that it itself translates to a lot, I think.
Definitely. I'm curious for those who might be in like a pivot or transitional phase, like what part of their chart do you think would be helpful to understand about themselves? Or I don't know how,
Mm,
like what,
yeah, yeah.
just from what I said, like what do you take from that, I guess, and what would you advise them to do?
Yeah, yeah, I think that's really interesting. I mean, it astrology as a whole is a very useful tool for change and transitions because this is something where if you were to consult an astrologer, and I'll say like an example for if you don't want to talk to an astrologer about it, but like your seasonal energetics and how where the cosmos are today and like how they're interacting with your chart specifically, it can define for you like in a reading, here is the part of you that's changing. Here's the nature of the change you're experiencing. Here's the timing context of what you're experiencing. So it can really validate in a super nuanced way. Oh,
Hmm.
this is an identity thing, and this is why you're feeling it, and this is when it kind of came on. What were you feeling then? So we can get really nuanced about specifically what's going on there, and that doesn't happen just from like it always happens through conversation. So I would be like, tell me about the type of pivot you feel like you're in and what part of your messy middle you're in. And like, let's contextualize it and put some energetic like language around it. But to, I think more so answer the question, the direction your question was coming from, where in your chart can you look if you are, or perhaps in a messy middle? My first like feeling was like, look at your moon and look at, because your moon's your emotional body. So
Hmm.
your emotional body determines the way in which you process life experience. So, what element is your moon sign in? What sign is your moon in? Great is even better. It's even most nuanced. But, like for you, your moon is in a water sign. You need to have a watery, internal, restful, peaceful, separated, private time during seasons of pivot to process that just in your own body. As a
Hmm.
Capricorn moon, I know that it, as an earth sign, it kind of takes my inner landscape a little bit extra time. Like it just moves kind of slow. So I have to give it time. I want to check in regularly. Maybe some structure within the pivot is going to make my emotional body, my inner world, like ready to then show up for whatever form of the change it is that I'm experiencing. So like resource yourself from the inside using what you know about your moon sign is what I would say.
Mm. Ooh, that is some value right there because I feel like everybody who, I don't know, like maybe not everybody, but a lot of people do listen to Dear Creator when they are just looking for the real lessons behind
Mm.
evolving and just like normalizing different transitions and things like that. So, anyone listening, if you're going through a pivot or a transition, maybe start with your moon sign. But I think that's really important too, of what you said, like just understanding exactly like what they're pivoting or like where in their life or business it might be and like actually being able to put all of the astrology tools together to figure out what's actually going on would be helpful. And they could book a reading with you, right? You do readings.
Yes, I do readings, all different types. Birth chart readings, birthday readings are really popular. And yeah, just like seasonal readings where it can help you contextualize the type of change you're moving through, like I said.
What are the birthday readings like?
Yeah, they're super fun. It really it hones in on your year ahead. And a lot of people, especially returning clients, come back to me in this way where, okay, we've already kind of looked at the birth chart. If we haven't done a birth chart reading, we spend a few moments there, just like so you know what that is. But we're really like I want to know what your intention for your year is and what you're hoping to cultivate this year. And I get to kind of like I'm always just in conversation in my readings. I'm never just like, here's your chart. Good luck.
Mhm.
It's how is your energy showing up for you right now? Because your unique combination of Sag, Capricorn, and Cancer is presenting differently right now than it was 6 months ago when you're in
Mhm.
grief, than it was 2 years ago when you're a different part of your business. It's like it's all of your energetics are coming together uniquely in this moment and will continue to come together uniquely over the course of your year. So I think that people just like to treat themselves to a little birthday reading, a little
Mhm.
cosmic kiss, if you will, to see like what the tones of the energy are that they're walking into so that they can weave that into how they're thinking about setting intention around, maybe creating plans around their year.
Okay,
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah, I also wanted to go back to the fact that you said that you're Capricorn moon and sometimes maybe if you're going through like a pivot or a change, you would maybe need a little bit more time to process or create structure, ground yourself and things like that. When you were deciding to rebrand, did you feel like it was like you were trying to decide whether or not to do that for a long time? Or like was there a moment that you were like, it's time. I need to rebrand.
Yeah, yeah, interesting question. So I decided, I'm trying to remember. I think it actually just I knew I had a problem with my website for a while, and I that's what I really initially was seeking support for, of like I need someone to help me build a website that I love, a website that's going to be something that can evolve with me and isn't just like this constant open tab in the back of my brain as something I should go update. So I knew I needed help with that. And that was what was kind of like lingering for me. But I think the Capricorn moon part of me was like, I would rather just keep doing it on my own though. I
Mm.
can just, and I think that with my business as a whole, it was, I'm just going to learn the skills. I'm going to grow it. I'm going to be the one forging the path. And there is this kind of independence, and it's a difficulty to ask for help with the Capricorn energy in us. I'm curious what your relationship with that
Mhm.
is. And that was probably the resistance to it for a little bit. But then it was just, it kind of spoke to me when Natasha, a friend of mine at Moons and Things Co, was like, hey, I have some spots open for next year, which is now this year for Brandon Webb. And then it just felt like a really good fit. And I'm actually the type where it actually really did just resonate. And I think I like felt like a solidity in that moment. So I don't think I was like holding or overthinking the decision too much. And like I know in the more nuance of my astrology and my chart, like why that is, but I don't think explaining that's helpful. But it really felt like an intuitive, grounded yes inside of my body. And thus I
Mhm.
committed and yeah, and then I just kind of went for it from there.
Yeah, I feel like when it comes to asking for help, it's more of like for me, I feel like when I ask for help, I feel guilty to ask for help. Or like I feel like I don't want to manage people and like tell them what to do, but then I also kind of do at the same time. It's like it's that push and pull constantly. And I feel like there is that resistance sometimes to ask for help because I have the skills, I have the thing, the the hands to do what I need to do, but do I always have the time? No. Could someone do it better? Probably in certain aspects of the business or just in life in general. So it is really learning how to trust the process and like reduce the responsibility that we put things onto ourselves in a way. And I'm curious about how it was like letting go of that responsibility for you during this process.
Yeah, yeah. When you were speaking, what was coming to me too is like I was getting curious within myself of like, yeah, how do we decide? Like, I feel that push pull all the time of like, I could do this with, I could just keep doing this, or like, when do I pull someone else in to help me with it? And I was thinking about all these other qualities that like kind of like uphold earth energy and like help us like over an overly heightened sense of responsibility is like crunchy earth energy, but like healthy responsibility and like responsibility where it's like we're not holding all the weight on our own is like the side we kind of want to be on. What kind of helps move from one to the other is like a values based and like question of like, well, what do I really value and what is the experience I really want to be having in my life? And can I honestly look at the amount of responsibility I am holding and ask myself, is this thing taking away from these other areas of life that I name that I want, and like having more responsibility towards myself and my well-being more so than like these tactical things that I just have an attachment to because I don't want to let go because there's actually I'm just holding the responsibility because actually I'm kind of like scared of like someone
Mhm.
else of like releasing the control of the thing.
Mhm.
When really then that's just rippling out and like taking away from my life in another way. So I guess it's kind of like circling back to like trust and values. But what was it like for me? So, and it does kind of answer the question too, because I think that I had to trust myself a lot more in investing in this type of support because I had never invested in someone else to do the building of the thing. Like I've always invested in business coaches and
Mhm.
consulting type work where it's like someone else is helping me learn new skills, learn content, learn things I needed to learn over the course of the last 3+ years, like have a successful business like this. But I was always the implementer and I always got to be the one holding the responsibility. It was easier, but it was also like safer for me. And letting go of the responsibility. What was interesting was like I think because acknowledging that it is kind of like scary, what really helped me was working with someone who I already had an established relationship and trust with. So I was able
Mhm.
to hand it to her. And then even the way that she like guided me into the container and into the process, I was just like, this is legit. And now I get to enjoy her doing her thing and admit that like I don't know this realm. Like I already knew that like this was a skill. I had tried to get my own Canva and font and design skills as far as they went. I'm like, I can't, I'm like, I don't have the
Mhm.
eye for this. And it was just being honest with myself of like to get my business to a place where I know it is and like deserves to be or like whatever, like to just honor the business, I had to give it to someone else who's
Mhm.
better at all of these things than me. And she made me feel really safe in the process as well.
That's good. Yeah, I'm so excited to see how everything turns out. But something that you also said was like it felt safer or it was safer to implement on your own when it came to working with like coaches and things like that. Was the
Yeah.
safety f a feeling or was it like an actual like you did you feel like you needed to learn that first before maybe in the future hiring someone to do it for you?
Yeah, I think it was that impulse of like, I just need to do this myself and like learn it myself. And I think
Hmm.
that like all of the earth energy in my chart, like it like my Virgo rising like loves learning a new skill. It's like so down. And with the way like my chart really like kind of affirms a lot of it for me. So I think that everyone's very different in that regard. I know a lot of people who just hire immediately for the implementation support and like don't have a problem handing that off to someone. I think it so like there's no blanket answer I could really give you. But I do think it kind of comes back to like it was fun. It was fun for me. And if I'm being honest now, I do think to a certain extent it was safer for me because it was kind of that impulse of to like hold the control. So I'm like not making that like wrong or anything. That was just where I was at in the process at that time. And then in
Hmm.
being with the process, I realized that like that old way was no longer serving me because I had this constant mental tab open about these other things that like I was either going to have to keep spending my energy trying to learn these skills that I actually don't want to because I want to be in my creative energy. I want to have fun and I don't think that I that's necessary, you know? So it's eventually you kind of like have to just see things for what they are
Hmm.
and find new ways to resource yourself like as we move through these kind of like different season. So I guess all to say I'm not making it wrong for my past how I used to do it at all. Am I answering your question?
I think so. I just love hearing you talk.
Thank you.
I'm also just super curious because you said that you've hired coaches and consultants in the past, and have you outgrown from the coaching world, like being supported by coaches and consultants, or like I guess like what? Because for me, I guess this year it would be like this year, I really reduced the amount of advice or the coaching support because previously in 2025, I did have a couple different coaches, but they were teaching me different things. But after I stepped, and there was nothing wrong with them at all. Like I really love these people and I've learned so much from them. But after I stepped out of those containers and learned to just try to do things on my own or take what I learned and apply them to my business or my life. I almost was like, whoa, like I actually don't want to do it that way. Or it's like
Hmm.
you learn something and you're like, okay, cool, but then you're like, wait, I don't want to do it that way. I guess like I would just
Yeah.
love to hear your experience with either getting out of the advice loop or business coaching support world.
Yeah, I love this question, and I think that I love that you're in a similar season like that to me, and I know that other people, at least in my world, and I'm sure our worlds
Hmm.
are as well, of just realizing that, maybe I've learned from other people and other frameworks like enough. Like I think that it's time to instead of constantly trying to but if I just go do this course over here, then all this other stuff I've learned is gonna like click into place. It's like, well, at some point there there needs to be like, I think for me it felt like at some point there needed to just be a little bit of space, and the space opened up pretty naturally. Like just it the support I was receiving from one of my coaches who's helped me so much was just ending. And I didn't feel an urge or need, like I felt so equipped to continue to implement on my own. And what I was surprised by when I just let myself have that space and didn't fill that space immediately with a new coach is like the thing I did differently. It's like, I'm just curious how this is going to feel, like without having someone else to check in with every day. Or not every day, like once a week. And it ended up feeling really good and really spacious. And like I did have that space to be like, oh, actually, my energy operates like at a much different pace than like
Hmm.
hers. And everything I learned was so valuable, but being in such close proximity, like almost drowned out my own natural rhythm. And I had all of the skills, the earthy things, the tangible things I needed to then drop into my own flow and rhythm with it. And it's been just a lot. It's been really nice to be in that space. I will actually correct myself and say that like I had actually like it was probably this time last year or earlier than that. I had signed myself up for like a program that was running in the fall of last year because I was like, oh, I this is a new for exactly what I said. This is a new skill. I don't have anything slotted for fall. Like this sounds fun. And then I arrived to fall and it was like not a good time for me to be in a program. And it kind of taught me that forcing external support on myself and like it showed me the way that it doesn't actually work all the time and it doesn't always like serve us. And I think that a lot my lesson like from that was that it's okay to not be the most like active person in where I resource myself, and that I can just come home to myself in a different way.
Hmm.
Um, so I do think that there's threads there of, again, circling all the way back to your question of it's been really fun to just like trust myself and resource myself instead. And the Capricorns in us are really good at building businesses. And like we can like have that there's some of that in there. Not to say that other energetics don't have that, but for you and I specifically, I think that it's probably really enjoying the freedom to not have someone else in our world as much.
Hmm.
I'm curious your experience of it. Uh,
Hmm.
but I think I'll just stop talking now.
I can yap for hours. No, that's so good. I Yeah, I feel like in the beginning of my business, I was kind of jumping from program to program, learning a lot of different skills that I might not have known before. Because I mean, I never worked corporate. I would always work kind of a multi-hyphenate type of career, and like that's still what I'm doing now. But when it comes to the business side of things, I've never really learned that traditionally or anything. So it was nice to be able to learn certain things from different entrepreneurs, coaches, people out there. But it did come to a point where I think I just started to outsource or learn in these programs to validate certain things about myself or the skills. I've always been the type of person to shout from the rooftops, like, you don't need to learn more skills that you already have. But that's literally exactly what I was doing. But I felt like that imposter syndrome of not knowing enough or not having enough proof or something. So I just would keep looking for that secret sauce or like that
Hmm.
secret formula and things like that. And it's a learning curve. You really have to like find that for yourself and like see the pattern and what's actually going on
Hmm.
sometimes. But it's been really nice to reduce the amount of external validation, external opinion, advice, things
Input.
like
Yeah.
that. And just like trust yourself because
Yeah.
after all of that learning, it's like, dang, like I have a lot that I know and now I just have to apply it and like just trust the process of applying it essentially.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I completely, but I feel like we all have our own versions of that. And I was just getting curious when you were speaking too about like the resistance or the blocks or like the stories that or the parts of ourselves that like keep us in the, okay, yeah, maybe I like maybe someone's listening, they're like, yeah, maybe I do have enough skills and I could try to just implement on my own and like trust myself. Like what actually like is that? Like, oh, I should probably just like go do this over here actually. And like it makes me curious about like really arriving with the part of ourselves that's like actually just scared and actually doesn't trust ourselves and not like
Mhm.
just abandoning that part of us and saying like, oh no, like this is what we're doing, like we're just gonna like trust ourselves and we're just gonna do it on our own. And like when really like if we acknowledge like we are a little scared to do things in a new way, we're a little, it's a little free, it kind of like freaks us out a little bit. Maybe it causes a lot of overthinking because now we do have all of these frameworks and all of these other inputs, and we're just like, instead of having someone else remind us of it, we're just like triggered into overthinking all of the things. And then we actually can't do it, take any action. And like it's all very normal and can feel very messy in that kind of
Mhm.
experience. And that's why it's like, hold on, let's come back to ourselves and let's have these like moments with ourselves where we can actually hear what is true for us in the moment and like trust to like making decisions for ourselves that are self-sourced, not externally sourced. It's someone else told me to do this. It's a lot easier to go through our businesses and our lives because someone else recommended it and prescribed it.
Mhm.
It's a lot messier and does require a lot more trust to say, this is how I'm going to show up for my business and my life today. And I'm insourcing that and I'm choosing it. And I'm gently holding all the context and the frameworks and the skills and all these other opinions on the back end. But really, it's about what feels right to me in the moment and taking that choice and making that step and understanding like that this is where I'm choosing to take my business right now. And like, having the choice come from something that's not so strategy and like trying to
Mhm.
force the mind to like find the right answer. It's like when you get quiet and actually meet yourself in these moments and hold all of the parts of you too, that's like, hey, I know it's a little scary over here, but like I'm really feeling that like this is the direction to take my newsletter this week, and this is the offer that is resonant with me, even though it might not have the same dollar amount or be what's aligned with like that what that other coach did that was really successful for them. It's like it's when we take action from this deeper place and
Mhm.
then just the cerebral plane and that more integrated place that we can actually feel confident and trusting of ourselves and actually start to enjoy the process because we're not just doing it because we think we should or someone else said. We're doing it because all of us is in the room, all of us is there. We're not attaching too hard to like any one thing. And that
Mm-hmm.
does require trust, and that does, but it also creates a sense of wholeness that feeds into the trust and feeds into that, like, I can just go to sleep tonight knowing that I showed up for my day and my choices authentically. And I didn't try to force anything, and I didn't just do the list because I felt like it. Like, I was, my whole, all of me was there. It wasn't just my mind guiding the show or like these other opinions. So that's kind of what was coming up for me, and what a lot of my work with like the integration coaching is like,
Mm-hmm.
and what I would offer people at the end of this chat is it's about coming into a place of like clearer knowing, and like something that just feels more deeply true to you than overtly true. And that happens in like the babyest steps in the day-to-day experience with
Mm-hmm.
ourselves. Well, how did that land for you? I'm curious.
I, yeah, well, I was going to say that when you start trusting yourself and you start going through that process in sourcing, which is, I love how you said that. That is one of the best things that you could probably learn to do for yourself. And I feel like there's almost, maybe, in my opinion, more of a bigger sense of accomplishment or just like feeling of like, wow, like I'm so proud of myself for doing that. And like it just keeps starting to compound over time where you just start trusting yourself. And in a way, it is like developing that leadership for yourself and your brand and your community and things like that as well. But I was also going to say, like, that sounds like exactly what you help people do. And maybe there are times in their life or business, their season journeys where learning new skills is really great and important. But then there are also times where they need somebody like you, an integration coach, to really help them apply certain things in a way that they get out of the overthinking cycle, get out of procrastination, or they just like take small actions with that accountability, with that sense of grounding, and at the end, they get the clarity that they need and they feel that accomplishment and everything. And then they can celebrate their small wins.
Yes, so many small wins along the way. I think that you synthesized that really well. Yeah, it's, and there is so much fulfillment and self-trust that comes from the insourcing, and like this moment of maybe accepting less external support is an example of that. But there's so many, yeah, there's so many moments in business and in life where, because it's just, it's constant. There's this constant external inputs,
Hmm.
and the more that we have that like in from inside out like flow of energy, where it's like we're really living from our heart and from our truth and from our own wisdom, then it really feels like everything just falls into place. And it does feel like it just starts in the moment, like on the day, with whatever you're facing that day.
Ooh, I love this conversation. I feel like I can talk to you for literally hours.
I know.
Is there anything that you want someone to take away from this conversation or any words of wisdom for anyone going through a rebrand, maybe both?
Yeah, I think I think that like what I would say to the version of me 2, 3 years ago, like I would tell her that she knows a lot more than she thinks she does.
Hmm.
That even though it seems like other people are further along, or you want to be further along, or any of the things, or like, oh wow, they said something so smart, I'm so inspired by them. Like I think that the more we can come home to ourselves and just trust ourselves and like listen to our own inner knowing and listen to what we know, then the more we get to contribute out into the world too, and just enjoy our days. It's like you get both like treats from like
Hmm.
coming home to yourself and living life from this like very deep heart-centered place. Your days get to feel good, and then it like puts you on the path that leads to like
Hmm.
communal work too.
Mm, I love that so much. Thank you so much for being on, Dear Creator. I am definitely going to link everything in the description. So anyone who wants an astrology reading or integration coaching or any of all the other things, thank you so much for being on the podcast, Jess. I'm so glad that we did this.
Me too. Thank you for having me.